The specific hazards could also be because of the radiological and the field effects in the substations, which we have tried to discuss earlier. All electromagnetic radiations are harmful if it exceeds a certain field strength. So, some effects of radio frequency and particularly the microwave radiated fields which are listed in the standards and design lectures have to be properly looked into, but some of the important points like the radiated energy can cause damage to the areas of low blood supply in the body. So, in case of overexposure or as per the standards, if the magnitudes have increased and the person experiences the more radiation energy because of the electromagnetic effects. So, there could be a damage for the blood supply to the body, and if the microwave energy above 3000 megahertz is reflected or absorbed by the skin. So, there could be a warning of excessive exposure provided and body feels warm sensation, and some cases the electromagnetic radiation energy below 3000 megahertz is absorbed below the skin without a significant temperature increase. So, the energy particularly in the range of 1000 to 10,000 megahertz could also cause eye cataracts. So, vision problems could arise with the critical frequency between 3000 megahertz. So, these are the hazards which could be affected by the radiological or the field effects in substations, very important hazards. So, what are the precautions have to be taken by the personnel working in the substation or in the electrical utilities? The first and foremost is to see and maintain a minimum working distance. So, a very important point to be considered. So, no person should work within the minimum working distance. These specifications are mentioned in the relevant standard, and what is the limits or what is the distances have to be followed are described in the standards, international and national standards from the exposed high voltage mains and also the apparatus or any high voltage equipment. The minimum working distance depends upon the actual voltage level which the equipment is being operated or the transmission which is being operated. It does not apply to operations carried out on mains and apparatus which are constructed to permit safe operation within these distances. Isolation of high voltage mains shall be effected by the following methods. The electrical circuits shall be disconnected only by the authorized person or persons who are in charge for the maintenance or the available for disconnecting the switches, circuit breakers or isolating the links or unbolting of the connections or switches which are to be disconnected. So, wherever possible the isolation should be visibly checked before the work is being taken up. So, where the means of isolation are provided with a device to prevent the closure by the unauthorized person, such a device shall be used. So, it is very important only authorized persons are to be available for the connection and the disconnection of the lines. The isolation shall be maintained until necessary suitable interlocking arrangements to prevent inadvertent energizing of the circuit. So, these minimum distances and minimum precautions have to be borne while working in the utilities. So, the safe electrical minimum clearances as per the standards, the limits of general approach for electrical safety is been given here. You can see the voltage and the minimum distances which are mentioned. This is the face to face voltage levels, the distance in meters and the distance in feet. So, you can see that over 750 volts the operation of the equipment, or when the personnel is trying to work in the area where up to 75 kilovolts. So, in such cases he should have a minimum clearance of 3 meters or about 10 feet for his to be followed as per the safety rules. So, in case the equipment or the lines are of 75 to 250 kilovolts, a minimum distance of 4.5 meters or 15 feet has to be allowed and maintained. Similarly, if it is more than 250 kilovolts to 250 kilovolts to 550 kilovolts, a minimum distance of 6 meters or 20 feet has to be maintained, a minimum clearance has to be maintained. Further, if it is more than 765 kV or 800 kV, a minimum clearance of 9 meters or approximately 27 feet. So, 9 meters and 27 feet in case of voltage levels of 765 or 800 kV have to be maintained. These are the standard values which are been given in the manuals or safety standards. So, important aspect of the precautions is the earthing or the grounding, which we have tried to discuss about this aspect. The precautions mentioned are to be adopted to the extent applicable and possible. Even though the substation is grounded, the equipment is grounded, the safety precautions of earthing or grounding is very important. So, a personnel should examine the earthing devices periodically and always prior to their use, and they have to use only earthing switches or any other special apparatus provided for earthing. They should properly verify the circuit whether it is live or dead or not, partially if it is insulated or damaged insulation, it has to be done by the means of discharging the circuit by using an earthing rod or a ground rod, or a potential indicator has to be used to see that there is no connection or there is no live end of the conductor, or there is no potential seen on the circuit. So, the indicator itself should be tested, whatever the indicator is being used for that, to check for live line circuit before and after the verification. So, these are some of the various safety devices which are used by the utility personnel or the electrical staff or technicians in the substations. This could be of insulating mats, it could be insulating gauntlets or gloves, suitable helmets which are to be used, and the insulating dress which is very important for the live line maintenance personnel. So, various safety devices and appliances are available for the personnel who are working in substation, and these available devices and appliances have to be properly maintained, properly verified and properly checked before it is being used. So, in general you can see in any typical substation the use of the rubber gloves or insulating gloves or gauntlets. Gauntlets are a longer type of gloves. This is a gauntlet which extends up to the which extends above the palm. So, these gauntlets or insulating mats, the insulating shoes and the insulated platforms are used for the safety aspects, Apart from this, proper safety belts in case of the personnel operating at a higher level, and suitable lamps, hand lamps which are used for the maintenance. So, there could be tower wagons and other specially insulated devices which could be used whenever required for the maintenance or working on the electrical equipment, and apparatus as a precaution against accidental electrical shock. So, several of these devices or appliances are being used. Apart from that, several tools which are insulated with brittle material or otherwise liable to have its insulation damaged when in use shall also be used very carefully. In case of the insulation has been damaged for the tools which are being used, these tools should not be used if it is noticed that the insulation of these tools have been damaged. So, the person or the engineer in charge of the work should ensure a proper maintenance and use of the safety equipment in the substation or in the utility, particularly attending the electrical maintenance works. So, as mentioned earlier, the devices have to be verified for the durability, proper care has to be taken, proper storage has to be done. So, example, in case of rubber devices, we know that the rubber perishes rapidly, particularly in tropical climate. So, utmost care has to be exercised in seeing that these rubber gloves or gauntlets, mats, shoes and other safety devices have to be properly checked for the insulation which these are being used by the employees for particularly working on a live line apparatus or live apparatus, very important. So, care of this rubber gloves have to be properly taken care, so that no person should put his gloves into his coat or a trouser pocket along with the tools. It has to be properly maintained separately. So, after the rubber gloves or gauntlets are used, they have been in use, they should be carefully cleaned and stored in a suitable container. The foldings should not be done and they should not damage this, which could create a shock when in case it loses the insulating properties for the personnel who are working on live apparatus. So, these have to be properly tested at regular intervals. Special mention about the maintenance of these gloves is being given in the manual of the instructions to the personnel at the substation. So, at a regular period before the person uses this rubber gloves or gauntlets to start, it is his duty to check each one in case for the cut there are cracks or weak spots by rolling it tightly, beginning at the gauntlets, and also notice if any air escapes, that is for to verify if there is a leak in the gloves or the gauntlets. If which shows a visible cuts or cracks, these should not be used and it should be returned and a new pair to be obtained and used for the job. Sometimes the visual lamp may be required to determine the condition of gauntlets or gloves. So, several methods are being used to check the proper functioning of this gloves or there is no damage to the gloves. So, every pair of this rubber gloves shall be carefully examined on each occasion before and after the work by the person in charge to ensure safety of the workman, very important, and these should be tested for the leakage current or the potential at frequent intervals in accordance with the mentioned IS or International Electrochemical Technical Standards, IEC standards. So, safety practices, very important aspect in any electrical network. It is very important that certain elementary safety practices are followed. The details of such practices are adopted by the use of the necessary equipment which could help. This could be to extinguish the fire, fire extinguishers in case of any event of fire on electrical mains or apparatus. The affected parts should immediately be isolated completely from its source of supply of electrical energy. These fire extinguishers, which are mainly not insulated, should never be employed in fighting fires, particularly near the exposed live conductors. Only such extinguishers should be used on the electrical mains and apparatus which are suitably marked for this purpose. Also, during the use of the fire hose, it should be ensured that the jet of water does not come in contact with the live conductors. So, this again could electrocute the personnel who is operating the fire hose. So, it is dangerous always, and important point to know that it is dangerous to throw a stream of water, a wet blanket or a stream from ordinary soda acid type extinguisher on live mains or apparatus, because the person who this extinguisher is being used could be electrocuted because of the activity which it does. So, the carbon dioxide or a carbon tetrachloride and other special type of extinguishers are available. Sand or any blanket may be used on live conductors and the static apparatus. So, last important is the lighting. Lighting should be adequate, very important. Inadequate lighting of working areas by itself is source of danger. So, particularly work is undertaken or maintenance work is undertaken even in the darkness. So, adequate lighting should be ensured to the working personnel so that the appropriate work is being done and necessary connections are being made. So, therefore, it is not advisable to allow any work in the darkness or ambient, dark ambient or where there is a poor illumination or ill ventilated places. So, a schedule of values and safe and adequate illumination is described in the standards both in Indian standard IS and International Electro Technical Commission standards IEC. So, several standards, several rules and the details of the lighting requirements are specified in the standards. So, the training to these personnel who are working in the substation or the utilities is very important. So, proper procedure pertaining to the safety aspect. In addition, the instructions about the hazards of electrical contacts or the hazards of electricity, the training to all the employees at the work and electrical installation is very important. So, all the personnel should be trained using the first aid, the firefighting equipment, the use of warning signals, guards and other protective devices for the safe operational procedures. So, necessary training program should be conducted, which should consist of not merely generalization and indefinite recommendations. It should be specifically based upon demonstration and training in the correct operation and maintenance of the transmission line, the equipment which are in substation and the apparatus which the person could come in contact. So, the supervision should be done by the supervising officers, should maintain a very close activity on the operations and maintenance works and see that any defective or damaged or careless handling of the equipment should not be permitted in the site. Under no circumstances should deviation from the safe practices should be tolerated, as this could result in unnecessary hazards and danger to the workman or the apparatus which it is being used. So, lighting, as mentioned earlier, very important. So, proper lighting has to be done. So, finally, is the grounding or the earthing stick, which is a very important device where before touching a high voltage circuit or before leaving it unattended and exposed, it must be de-energized and grounded with a grounding stick or earthing stick. So, this grounding stick must be left on the high voltage terminal permanently connected until the circuit is about to be re-energized in case of maintenance. So, during maintenance, the ground stick has to be connected continuously and the work has to be carried out. So, the grounding sticks must be available in the entrances of high voltage areas, and automatic grounding arrangements or the systems with necessary audible warning tones to remind personnel to the ground that the high voltage equipment are strongly encouraged for 2-person operation and are mandatory for 1% to unattended operation. So, very important. So, for systems particularly with bare conductors at moderate voltages, so the use of ground stick is strongly recommended, particularly if the setup contains energy storage devices like capacitors or other devices. So, these are a few of the examples of how the grounding stick or the earthing stick. So, there this thing will be connected to the grounding stick. The grounding stick, this is the metal thing which will be connected to the ground wire, and subsequently it will be grounded, a connection to the ground. So, this comes in contact with the equipment which is to be grounded. So, this is an example of the substation earthing stick or the grounding stick which is used for the maintenance by the personnel. So, thank you. So, that was about the importance of the grounding and the safety precautions to be employed by the substation or the personnel who are working in the substations. So, thank you.